Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. My name is Christina. This is a reading for those with Pisces rising, or if you just have Pisces anywhere in your chart and you're needing a neutral energy to balance the masculine and feminine energies within yourself, then this reading is for you. I've already pulled your cards. We're starting with the bottom of the deck energy today. So the first card you have out is the Ocean, which I'm going to come back to. Because it ties into sort of the second part of the reading. And then for these two decks, you have the Golden Egg and the Page of Coins. So this Golden Egg, first of all, represents the heart chakra. And I always say with this card is that your heart, your loved ones, the things that you treasure the most are absolutely safe and secure. And you also had the heart come out in your current energy, which I will come back to, but it's just sort of emphasizing this energy of your heart space, or the things or people or energies or like whatever the things that you find most precious and wanting to keep safe and protected. There's all of this sort of energy of almost like, I'm going to say protection because that's the closest sort of word that I can find to represent this energy, but the energy of protection implies that there's some sort of threat around you. It doesn't feel so much like that. Like there's no sort of like danger or anything. It's just kind of like trying to maintain an energy or a state of peace and calm and serenity. And I feel like you absolutely are doing that. But the thing about sort of protection is that it's not really an energy that you want to maintain long term because it sort of closes you off to other opportunities. And I think that what your reading is about today is sort of the shift between that. So I will get into the more specific details of that, but with this Page of Coins here, I was really just sort of drawn to the coin in her hand, which today is the Golden Egg, your heart. And there's this sort of like force field around it, is kind of how it was looking to me. And so this reading is talking about sort of going from an energy of like protection or perhaps just like restraint or something like that into an energy where you can like put your heart on display, right? There's freedom, or like just like being able to like run through a field is kind of what this is feeling like. Okay, so that's the overall energy. We're going to start with the current energy where you had the Temple, again, the heart, and the Mystic. So I'll come back to the Mystic in a moment, but the Temple and the heart today was also coming out with this turtle energy, which is so beautiful. Because it's all of this sort of protection. Again, it's not quite protection. So what this turtle energy was bringing up, I feel like I've told this story in another reading, which I can't remember now, but it reminded me of sort of a moment in my childhood where I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, and so my grandfather would run errands sort of in the city, and because my grandmother didn't have a car, or like she doesn't know how to drive, we would all go together, and while my grandfather was running errands, my grandmother like took us to a Japanese botanical garden in the middle of the city. And so that's what this energy is representing. It's kind of like an oasis in the middle of a bustling city. And I feel like that's your energy. So you are creating an environment of like an oasis because the energy around you is chaotic or bustling or just busy or just a lot, right? Like that's where the protection comes in. It's not necessarily a danger or threat. It just feels like it's just too much chaos is kind of how this is feeling. And what I love about this coming out with the Mystic, especially with the Temple as well, it's like whatever this state you're in, it could be tied to a physical place with the Temple and the heart. I was sort of noticing this boat. So it could be like you go to a place that brings you sort of peace and serenity and calm and like an oasis, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be like a mental state or an emotional state that allows you to sort of like protect yourself from energies in your environment. But what's interesting about this mystic is that it's a very active process, meaning that it's like you're almost like taking the energies that are coming at you, right? Any sort of like disharmonizing energy. And then, well, what I'm just getting with this is kind of like the energy of like a force field, right? There's a force field if you think of like sci-fi movies where there's just like an energetic force field where nothing can get in. And if there's sort of like a projectile that hits the force field, it seems like what it is that you're doing is taking that energy and almost like using it, transforming it internally in order to bolster or add more energy or force to the force field. I hope that makes sense. So you're taking the energy that is being shot at you, metaphorically, and then using that, transforming it into more protection, which is gorgeous. And so with the tarot cards, you have here the Strength card, and I've been saying about strength a lot recently, is that you only use your strength when the environment around you requires it, meaning that it is sort of a difficult or challenging or just sort of like a restricting energy is kind of how this is coming through. And then with the Wheel of Fortune coming out next, I've talked about this card previously as being like a gyroscope in space. So I'll link the video above just to sort of show you what that's talking about. But symbolically, it's representing sort of like this inner core that's spinning. So it's like when your inner core is spinning, when you're actively sort of transforming or transmuting the energies within you, you can like any sort of external force that may try and knock you off balance or like in a different direction doesn't affect sort of the alignment, basically, is what this is talking about. So because you're doing this sort of like inner transformational transmutational perhaps work on the energies that are coming towards you, it's allowing you to maintain balance and alignment despite any sort of the external influences that may try and knock you off course, is kind of how this is feeling. And then finally you have, well, not finally, but next up you have the Three of Coins, which is all of this sort of like strength, right? It feels like something that you are actively doing, and you have all of this support from your guides, right? I see these two sort of unseen influences as being the guides sort of helping you to maintain this center of alignment, is kind of how this is feeling. And then to further emphasize that, you have the oyster and the snake. So all of these cards have dark backgrounds, right? Just which is just meaning there's not a lot of light or clarity or perhaps like positivity in your environment where you are now. But you, Pisces, are doing an incredible job at sort of maintaining your peace and serenity despite any of the energies that are coming towards you. And in fact, it seems like you are using the energies that are coming at you in order to fortify and solidify your position so that none of their energy or any of this external energy can sort of knock you off balance, is what this is talking about. And with this oyster, I love because it's been coming out so much recently, right? Because the pearl is only gained through irritation or difficulty or grit, right? So it does require all of that sort of energy to create or gain or harvest that valuable piece of information or understanding or whatever it is. But because the next card to come out was this, the Eros card, which talks about passion. So it's like, I feel like you've been maintaining this course because it's something that you're passionate about. And with the Temple, it's like, it's a space where you find peace, right? You've created that peaceful state within you through this sort of steady action that you've been taking. It's like an action that is very like it takes energy, right? It takes energy, but it also is almost like taking energy to maintain course is kind of how this is feeling. But what's incredible about these 3 cards, because the moon came out next. So what I was actually seeing is that it's almost like this is your environment, the area of difficulty that you've been in, and it's like you're about to be spit out into the next thing. Because you are the pearl in this case, or the diamond, right? It's like, and of course diamond symbolizes a transformation through extreme pressure. And because of that pressure, you've become as solid and strong as a diamond, basically, is what this is talking about. And with these 2 cards here, the moon and the King of Wands, because it's like you're about to be like spit out, for lack of a better expression, spit out into some sort of new environment that's going to allow you to take a lot of action. Because if you just compare these sort of the Strength versus the King of Wands, both sort of fiery action cards, where the Strength is implying having to maintain or even like restrain some aspect of yourself. And then once you sort of pass through whatever this sort of next journey is, this next like doorway, it's going to allow you to take action. Like this will be the opportunity for you to act. Okay. And then what's incredible for the next section of what it is that you need to know, these 2 cards came out with the River and the Sustainer. And so how I was seeing this moon card with the river and also with the ocean that was at the bottom of the deck is that the river that you've been traveling on is about to rejoin the ocean, whatever that means for you. So I feel like you've been sort of just surrendering to the flow of the river, right? Like it kind of feels like you like hopped on some sort of path and are just following it through to the end, knowing that because you've been following your passion, knowing that it will sort of open up and rejoin the ocean at some point. And I feel like that's the point that's coming up here with the King of Wands. Because what you have here with the animals is the moth and the lizard, which is so incredible because the moth is talking about coming up out of all of this sort of dark energy, right? It's much more freeing because all of the animal cards from the first section, the turtle, the oyster, and the snake all have an energy of protection about them, right? With the hard shell for both the turtle and the oyster, and then the snake, that one particularly I see as being an energy of like protection or energetic protection, but the moth is much more free. And I feel like with the lizard here, which I will come back to, but you have here the 6 of coins, which I always see as sort of a long-term investment. So it's like you have made some sort of long-term investment is kind of how this is feeling. You've been on this course for a while, and it's like the river is about to open up into the ocean. And what you have here incredibly is the Ace of Cups, which is all of this sort of like overflow, beautiful, unconditional love, but it's endless. It's as endless and bountiful as the ocean, basically. And there's something about here, Pisces, where, because you have the next few cards to come out are the Comic and the Unicorn. So this Comic card has come out 3 readings in a row, which is so interesting. Because usually that happens whenever I do like bunches of readings. There's usually like one or 2 cards that just comes out in every single reading. For this section, it's the Comic, which is today coming through is almost like an opportunity for you to lighten the load, because it feels like you've been sort of like having to maintain very strong boundaries for a long time, and that's been putting you in an, it's absolutely necessary because it's strengthened your resolve, but it does take a lot of strength, right? So I feel like this Comic energy is just coming up to confirm that there will be a moment where you can sort of lighten the load. And with this Unicorn was coming out with this the Page of Swords today. So this unicorn I see as being like signs and synchronicities, of course, but there is this sort of aspect here because it is sort of like a connect the dots kind of energy, or just like a projection, right? Like an image on a screen that's presented to you. So, and with this Page of Swords, I often see this as sort of like holding the truth, or like having a truth, or whatever it is, like a direction perhaps, but almost being like tentative or shy or timid about it, right? Like it's not quite like a strong conviction. It's more of like a tentative unsureness, because it kind of feels like whatever this ocean represents, right? Wherever it is that you've been heading towards, it's almost like you didn't quite believe that it was real or possible. It's like you were going down this path because perhaps it was just convenient or something like that. There was some sort of like sign that you should move this way. So it's like following that, even though there's perhaps this energy within you that was feeling like it wasn't quite possible, or there was like some sort of like mystical or unreal element about it. But it's like it is going to sort of reveal itself. You are going to interact or meet with whatever this ocean energy is. And because it's coming out with sort of like this moon, the next card to come out is this gazelle, which is so interesting because of like the horns on the head here. And this is a sun energy. So it's kind of like where you've been currently up until this point has been in sort of this moon energy, which is talking about like illusions, secrets, things that are hidden, that sort of, or just like an energy of darkness and kind of like perhaps like difficulty or separation, right? That kind of energy. But it's like you were following the signs anyway towards whatever this thing is. And it's like, this is the real thing. This is the thing that actually exists. It does look slightly different than perhaps the energy that you were expecting, because of course unicorns in our physical environment are not real creatures. It's more so of like a collective projection or myth. It's kind of what this is coming through with. But with this gazelle, it's like, this is the real thing, right? It's like once you sort of remove those layers of protection, I'm going to put in quotations, it allows you to see this thing. So it could be a person, though it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could just be more so of an experience. But the important thing about this dynamic is that you're going from an area of darkness where it's like you can't see clearly, into an area of bright, sort of like a spotlight put on whatever this experience is. It's like you've reached it. It's almost like this energy was the thing that was sort of leading you down this path, right? Because the next two cards to come out here are the One card and the Nightingale. So it came out like this. So the One card just sort of meaning oneness, unity, consciousness, some sort of mystical experience. It's reuniting with whatever this gazelle energy is. So on the table here, it looks like this. So what this is talking to me about, because I sort of see this nightingale as like putting out a call into like the universe, right? This is some sort of desire. And it could be whatever it is that you are, the energy that you are being met by or rejoining in some way. It's like if it is a person, it doesn't necessarily feel like that. It feels more so of like an experience, or like a spiritual experience perhaps, that absolutely sort of shows up in your physical environment, whatever that means. But it's kind of like that energy that you are aligning with also sort of put out this call, and that's sort of what you saw in the unicorn. It's like that their call was the sign for you to sort of move in that direction, if that makes sense. So it's like this place that you will go to, or this, whatever it is, the energetic vibration of this Unity Oneness card was also calling you in this direction. is basically what this combination of cards is saying. And then you have here the Eight of Wands, right? The Eight of Wands and the Fool. I love this Eight of Wands so much, right? Because it's a very clear direction forward. So if you're feeling any doubt, Pisces, about where it is you've been going or which path you've been heading down, it's kind of like just trying to reassure you that this energy was also calling you towards it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been drawn to go in that direction at all. And there may just be right now an energy of like difficulty just because it's like the bottleneck or like the really narrowest part of the river right before you get spit out into the ocean, whatever that means. But all of this sort of like the Fool energy coming out at the end here is kind of just emphasizing that it is going to be sort of this new start where you can sort of like bare your heart, right? So that it's not sort of in this kind of closed off nest is kind of how that's feeling. And then finally, the last 4 tarot cards to come out, which is so interesting, is the 10 of Wands, the 9 of Wands. So these were actually trying to explain what this Eros energy is, right? Because it's kind of like 10 of Wands I always talk about. This one specifically is kind of like having to hold all the pieces of the wheel together without the actual wheel, right? So it's like you're holding a whole bunch of sticks, but you don't actually have like the part that allows the wheel to move. And then the 9 of Wands talks about like an uphill battle. But what's interesting about this combination is that it is a countdown, right? It's like a 10, 9, 8. So you are sort of there. You're in this energy of a countdown. Could just be like the new year, right? You might just be like waiting to get through the holidays and going into the new year and getting that sort of fresh start. It could be that. But it could be also something very different for you, depending on whatever this is. But it is like you have a clear path forward. You are moving forward. It might be with sort of like this 8 of Wands. There might be sort of this feeling of like narrowing. But that's sort of like the last kind of like narrowing energy before you get spit out or released into the wild or the ocean. Okay, and I'm going to end it with these 2 cards, the Empress and the 10 of Cups, which is so gorgeous. The 10 of Cups has been ending a lot of readings recently as well. So it's just kind of, because of this one's kind of like it feels like the unicorn. Similar energy to this is sort of like an idealized version that is absolutely what you're going towards. And I feel like when it reveals itself to you, like this idealized goal or whatever it is, outcome that you've been steadily moving towards, I feel like it's going to look slightly different than you expect with the Empress, but it is absolutely going to sort of show up in your physical environment is how I'm reading this message today. So Pisces, I'm going to end it there for the message. I'm going to move to the extended, which is in the description box below. We're going to talk about what's something that you can focus on in an area of growth. Thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays to everyone. I will see you next week, sort of after the holiday, like the Christmas holidays. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.